What's going on, everybody? The networking guru here with Network Plus, Domain 4 questions. Let's go ahead and get started. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that bell. Let me get this face out of the way, and let's go to our Domain 4 questions. So I think we have 60 questions we're about to go over. Here we're at our academy, our learning management system. We're going to go to our quizzes here. I'm just going to search Domain 4. And there's our Domain 4 questions. And yes, it looks like we have 60 questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So question 1. And I'll leave my face here. In the last video, we put it down here. I think that was a little better. Question 1. Which of the following is an example of a physical security measure? So part of cybersecurity, which is also part of network security, because we have to protect our data centers too. It's our network equipment. And at least for at the table talking security, we got to understand. But something physical is exactly what it says. It's in the physical realm. So it's going to be a biometric lock. It's going to be B. Go ahead and pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 2. What is geofencing commonly used for in logical security? So geofencing, that's using GPS to create pretty much a border, a logical border when you can use a piece of equipment. So if your computer is geofenced to your corporate campus network, it'll have that, not physical barrier that says if you leave this area, you won't be able to access the network. So let's see. Yep, it's going to go with A, restricting access to network resources based on the user's physical location. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 3. Which of the following is an international regulation focused on data protection and privacy for individuals within the European Union? That is the GDPR. That is the General Data Protection Regulation. I almost said right. Sometimes I say that, and even in my videos I get called out on it. But yes, that's the GDPR. That is data privacy for EU citizens. So if you're an organization operating in Europe or you're processing European customers' data, you're beholden to the GDPR. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 4. In which type of attack does an attacker use double tagging to bypass network segmentation and access traffic in a different VLAN? So that's going to be called a VLAN hopping attack. So a VLAN hopping attack is when a malicious user will double tag their Ethernet frame to get access to another VLAN. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 5. Which type of attack involves an attacker setting up a fake wireless access point that mimics a legitimate one to trick users into connecting and stealing their data? So there's two descriptions here that my students get confused on. This is describing an evil twin attack because it's going to actually mimic the access point. What it's mimicking is the actual SSID that a laptop will connect to. That's exactly what this question is saying. Sometimes you'll see something called a rogue access point, and a rogue access point, if it's like an umbrella term, evil twin is under there, but a rogue access point is just any access point on the spectrum or in your area that's not legitimate. It doesn't have to necessarily mimic the real enterprise SSID. And that's what an evil twin attack specifically does. So I just want to make that clarification. Go ahead and pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 6. In the context of network security, what is a key benefit of using an access control list? So ACLs will permit and deny traffic. That's what we configure on firewalls and routers to filter inbound and outbound. It can be based on source, destination IP, source, destination protocol, or ports. But we have ACLs in cloud-based firewalls as well. We have access control lists that deny or permit as well. Sometimes you see it like allow as well, or block. Those are sometimes the vernacular. But yeah, in the context of network security, key benefit, it's going to be A. They filter network traffic based on specified rules, such as an IP address and protocol type. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 7. Which of the following is not a characteristic of multi-factor authentication? So we have a couple answers here. This is actually a little bug we have that I'm going to fix right now where my answers were doubling. I'm going to pause the video, be right back. Okay, we're back. Just had to do a little fix here. But what is not a characteristic of MFA multi-factor authentication is combining something you know, something you have, and something you are into an authentication process. So what is not, it eliminates the need for passwords entirely. It's not true because username and password could be a part of your two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Question 8. What is the primary role of 802.1x in a network security environment? So that's going to be its authentication. So 802.1x is used in conjunction with things like a AAA protocol like Radius that will, has a process, has a supplicant, has an authentication server, it has the authenticator that all work in conjunction with this protocol with AAA to authenticate you to the network or to a network device onto the network. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. What is the primary goal of a DDoS, distributed denial of service attack? So any denial of service attack is just to stop that service from running, whatever it is, that server, service, website. And what happens when you stop it is legitimate users can no longer access what they're trying to access. So it's going to be C, to prevent legitimate users from accessing a targeted system or service. We have different types of DDoS attacks that all include botnets and controllers. We have a SYN flood attacks, things like that. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 10. What is the primary purpose of a MAC flooding attack on a network switch? So what a MAC flooding attack is essentially a malicious user sending millions of MAC addresses to the switch, and that does a couple things. One, it's going to overload the MAC address table. It's going to and in doing so, legitimate traffic can't be sent now. And what happens is the CPU that manages the MAC address table, the CPU does the compute for that, becomes throttled. It's essentially what a broadcast storm does as well. It's just MAC addresses are being flooded throughout the network and the switch can't keep up. A different MAC flooding attack is something like that, causing a broadcast storm. So the best answer here is going to be A, to exhaust the switch's MAC address table and force it to broadcast frames. So we can read the explanation here. In a MAC flooding attack, the attacker sends a high volume of packets with fake MAC addresses to fill up the switch's MAC address table. And once that happens, it starts broadcasting frames to all ports, essentially acting like a hub. And then there we go. It's no longer functioning like a switch. Question 11. What is a common impact of a rogue DHCP server on a network? So rogue DHCP server is a DHCP server that's responding and acting like a legitimate one, but giving false IP addressing information. So we're going to go with A, provides unauthorized IP addresses that can disrupt the network communication. Again, it can send out duplicates, things like that. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 12. What is the primary purpose of a public key infrastructure, or the PKI, or PKI? So, very simple version of this, but yes. It provides a framework for issuing, managing, and validating digital certificates, which enable our TLS sessions, which enable HTTPS for us to have encrypted data in transit sessions for anybody on the internet, for any web server that enables it. But yes, that's a good answer, right? A, to provide a framework for issuing, managing, validating digital certificates. PKI has a robust architecture, though, that we could deep dive into. Question 13. Which of the following is the most effective reason for disabling unused ports on a network switch? So this is hardening our network switch. And what this is going to allow us to do is prevent unauthorized physical access to the network. So the answer is B. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 14. Which of the following best describes geofencing in the context of network security? So again, kind of went over this. It's putting that logical barrier, but it's for you in the physical realm. You go past that logical barrier based off GPS, you won't be able to access the network anymore. So we're going to go with C, limiting network access based on a user's geographic location. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 15. Which of the following best describes encryption in transit, or data in transit encryption? That's going to be our TLS sessions, our IPsec sessions. When data is getting sent across a network, we're encrypting it. So encrypting data as it moves across a network to ensure confidentiality, and that's exactly what encryption does. Whether we're talking symmetric, asymmetric encryption with different cipher suites and the different things that enable it, like TLS, IPsec, it changes. At the end of the day, encryption does plain text to ciphertext, making it unreadable, keeping your data confidential. So that's going to be C. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 16. What is the main purpose of the principle of least privilege? So principle of least privilege, one of the key tenets of zero trust architecture, and something that enterprises have kind of been doing for a while now, but when we actually break it down, that is to restrict users and admins to exactly what they need to do, so we don't have that kind of privilege creep or administrative rights that someone doesn't need that then can exploit them. So I believe that's going to be A, to restrict users to the minimum access necessary to perform their tasks. Pause the video to read the explanation. Question 17. What is the primary purpose of a screened subnet, formerly known as a DMZ, in network security? So that's when we get that, we segment that, like on a firewall, like we have zones. So one of those zones could be like a screened subnet that has public-facing servers that need to be facing the public, but we don't want them internal on our network where someone from the internet can access that web server, but now they're in our intranet. We kind of don't want that. So we put it in a DMZ area where internal customers can reach it and it's safe, but there's no there is no A plus B equals C and then B plus C equals A. There's none of that, right? What I'm trying to say is essentially servers in that DMZ, they're isolated in their own little segment, so it's safe for us. So we're going to go with B, to isolate public-facing services from trusted internal networks. Go ahead and pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 18. Which social engineering attack relies on an attacker sending fraudulent emails to trick a user into providing sensitive information or clicking on a malicious link? So when you see email that's always phishing, that's like, we say, oh, people, I got a phish attack on my phone. That's fine, but that's technically called smishing. When it's over the phone, on a phone call, you're talking, it's called technically phishing. Phishing, the threat vector is technically email. So when you see email and social engineering, more than likely it's going to be phishing. Question 19. What does the term data locality refer to in regulatory compliance? And what we're saying here is that depending where your data is being processed, where your customers are coming from, where you place servers, there may be regulations that you have to comply with that you may not be used to because you may not be used to doing business in that region. So let's see. I believe that's going to be A here for data locality, which is ensuring data is stored in a specific physical location or region. Yep, so pause, read the explanation if you'd like. Question 20. Which of the following best describes a distributed denial of service attack? So it's going to go B, an attack that involves multiple sources flooding a target with excessive traffic. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 21. What is the main advantage of using RBAC, role-based access control, in an organization? And again, this is another one of those principles, like the principle of least privilege. This is another authentication, authorization, not technique, but almost like an SOP that we should use. That when we're granting permissions, we're setting authorization rules. We want to do it based on the role. So if someone's a network engineer, does that mean they should get access to the database and get the same privileges a database administrator should get? No. And when it comes to the user, a lot of time this is big on your shared drive, your local shared drive that you may have. If the accounting department has things specific to payroll that only the accounting department needs access to, well, the sales and marketing teams shouldn't have those permissions either because it's not part of their role. So we're going to go with B. It restricts users to the minimum permissions needed for their role. Question 22. Which authentication protocol is commonly used in enterprise networks for centralized authentication and supports AAA? So there's two AAA protocols here. Now, TACX and Radius are both considered AAA. So I'm going to go with the Radius here. Centralized authentication. I might change these answers and just get TACX out of there. TACX is usually used on the network, meaning when we have wireless users that are connecting to WPA2, WPA3 Enterprise, on the back end, the what's authenticating them is typically Radius. So that would be like our wireless LAN controller. We're building a wireless profile, wireless network. we enable WPA2 Enterprise, we typically have to give an IP address of where that AAA server is, and we're typically using radius. Where TACX is typically for people authenticating on network devices, or network devices authenticating on the network. So we're going to go with radius here. But yeah, we see it's more focused on device management rather than centralized authentication protocol for like users. Question 23. Which of the following is the primary purpose of deploying a honeypot in a network? So honeypot's a device or system that looks legitimate, but it's not. It's there so that we can capture our adversary's TTPs. So we're going to go with B. To attract and analyze malicious activity in a controlled environment. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 24. Okay, yeah, similar. What is the main purpose of a honeypot in network security? To lure attackers into a controlled environment. And like I explained in other videos, we're going to have some repeats like that. Just because the way the learning management system is, we grouped all our domain 4 questions together. So let's continue. Which of the following is a key difference between DNS poisoning and DNS spoofing? So DNS poisoning, that's going to mess with a DNS server, like its cache, putting false A records in there, or just false things in there that it will then respond to the user. While a DNS spoofing involves sending fake DNS responses to clients. So one is affecting the server. One is like, hey, actually, we're going to send you something fake. So we're going to go with B here. DNS poisoning modifies the DNS server's cache, while DNS spoofing involves sending fake DNS responses to clients. Question 26. How does port security enhance network security? So now we're talking port security that's configured on the actual switch ports. That's going to limit the amount of MAC addresses that can be learned on that incoming interface. So we're going to go with C, by limiting the number of MAC addresses allowed on a port. Question 27. What is the primary purpose of encryption in network security? So that's to have confidentiality, turn plaintext into ciphertext. So we're going to go with C, to convert data into a secure format, preventing unauthorized access. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 28. Which type of malware encrypts a user's files and demands payment to unlock them? That's going to be ransomware. So this is a type of malware that, again, like it says, it's going to pretty much make your files unreadable, unusable if it happens on your desktop. And it's going to be like, pay us this much in Bitcoin to release your files. And you should never do it because they're never going to release your files and take that encryption off. It just happens on an enterprise scale to like your NAS, your storage area network. Having a good backup, right? A full backup will help you because you can revert back to that backup that doesn't have the ransomware. But that is going to be D, ransomware. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 29. What is the goal of an address resolution protocol ARP poisoning attack? So remember, ARP does that layer 3 to layer 2 mapping. You have those ARP caches and ARP tables on your systems that allow you to create that full packet to get the default gateway's MAC address. So you can create that destination MAC address in a layer 2 header. But what is the point of a ARP poisoning attack? So that's going to be to say, hey, give you a false record saying I'm the default gateway's MAC address is actually me. So you do that ARP reply that says, hey, I'm actually 192.168.0.1. And now users, when they build their packet, that layer 2 header, that destination MAC address is going to the malicious default gateway because ARP, that's the way it works. Then that malicious gateway, wherever it is, probably just another computer, is going to do packet capture and then forward you off to the internet so you will never know. That is B, to redirect network traffic to a malicious device by sending falsified ARP replies. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 30. What is the difference between DNS poisoning and DNS spoofing? So we actually just talked about that, just reiterating again. But yeah, that's going to be D. DNS poisoning modifies legitimate DNS server records, while DNS spoofing tricks clients into using fake responses. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Which of the following best describes VLAN hopping? So that's going to be A. That's manipulating the VLAN tagging protocol to access unauthorized VLANs. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. What type of rogue device might perform unauthorized DHCP services, and what is its impact? So that's going to be a rogue DHCP server. So we have two answers here. It's going to be B. So this A doesn't, a DHCP server, oh, excuse me, that the only answer here is B. So a rogue DHCP server does unauthorized DHCP services. So here it's a rogue DHCP server that assigns incorrect IP addresses to disrupt network communication. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. My eyes played a trick on me. I thought A and B were both DHCP. It's like, whoa, what the heck? Okay. Question 33. Which term refers to the potential for harm due to a weakness in the system? This is actually a good one because I think the definitions when it comes to these words in cybersecurity are so closely related, it can sometimes get very confusing. But this does describe a vulnerability. So a vulnerability is anything in the system that can then be exploited. It's pretty much saying, oh, we left the back door open that anybody can SSH into if they change their port number to this SSH port number, right? We change it from 22 to, I don't know, 1046 or something like that. So that's a weakness in the system. And the vulnerabilities in a system, the vendor should be patching and fixing, okay? Now, when a vulnerability gets exploited, that's the definition of exploit. When you actually take advantage of a weakness in the system. This is the potential for harm. Because even if my system's vulnerable, it really doesn't mean much unless somebody exploits it. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 34. An attacker gains access to a restricted area of a building by following closely behind an employee who opens the door. Which term best describes this? Tailgating. It's like when I'm tailgating someone on the freeway because they're in the left lane and it's 70 and they're going 72, I'm tailgating them, right? So I might be flashing lights too, letting, hey, get over. But that also happens when we have secure areas we have to badge into and we don't have man traps or what they call access control vestibules now. That's what they call it. Not vegetables, vestibules. But yeah, that's tailgating. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 35. Which attack involves associating a malicious MAC address with the IP address of a legitimate device to intercept network traffic? So here we're talking the layer 3 to layer 2 mapping, and that protocol is called ARP, so this is ARP poisoning. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 36. What is the key difference between a public key infrastructure certificate and a self-signed certificate? So a PKI, it's part of the architecture. That's where we have our root CAs, our intermediary CAs, our registration authorities, our CRL servers, our OCSP protocol that lets us know when a certificate's invalid. With a self-signed certificate, we're not getting that certificate signed off by a root CA, so web browsers may not trust that self-signed certificate. But that is one of the... So let's look at our key differences here. That kind of just described it. So yeah, PKI certificates are more secure for public use, and self-signed certificates could be used within an intranet, within your enterprise. That it may not be going to the external internet. It's not B. C is dead wrong. Asymmetric encryption, public-private key pairs are definitely needed. And this is dead wrong. PKI certificates do need validation from certificate authorities, so we're going to go with A. PKI certificates are considered more secure for public use, while self-signed certificates are typically used internally. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 37. Why is network segmentation particularly important for Internet of Things and industrial Internet of Things devices? Because those IoT devices, it doesn't matter if it's in an ICS, OT environment, or in our IT environment, are inherently a security risk because there is no secure protocols on them. So we want to isolate them because they increase our attack surface. So we're going to go with B. To isolate vulnerable IoT/IIoT devices from the main network, reducing the attack surface. And that's because the vendors producing these IoT devices are they're not selling to cybersecurity guys. They're selling to people that want to automate and make their house really cool, which it does. But in an enterprise or an OT environment, that increases our attack surface. So we want to isolate them. Common VLAN is 107, right? Because 107 looks like IoT. Anyways, layer 2 network segmentation. Question 38. Which of the following best describes a vulnerability? That's a weakness or flaw in a system. A proactive measure to mitigate security risks? No. That would be like preventive control or like mitigation. An intentional attempt to breach security measures? like exploiting, right? But no, that's D. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 39. Which of the following is a key benefit of changing default passwords on network device? So this is just simple hardening. Simple hardening that gives us better protection, because if it's a default password, there's a potential, if I know the model of your router, maybe I look that up and I get a long list of passwords I can try over and over again. So it's going to be C. It mitigates the risk of attackers exploiting known default credentials. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 40. Which of the following is an example of a social engineering attack? So social engineering deals with the human element, the human flaw, vulnerability in all of our networks that we'll never get rid of until our AI overlords take over. I just watched the new Dune show and, Valerian Jihad, AI thinking machines. Anyways, for now, social engineering can still happen to humans. And maybe it'll happen to AI bots. Who knows? Maybe we can social engineer AI eventually. But that's going to be C. Convincing an employee to reveal their login credentials via a phone call. Question 41. Network segmentation is often used in industrial Internet of Things environments. What is the primary purpose of segmentation in these environments? It's to isolate. We don't want those increasing our attack surface in a production network. So it's going to be A, to isolate IoT devices from core network resources. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 42. Which of the following best describes a reason to segment a network for guest users? And that's because we don't want guest users actually getting access to critical enterprise resources. Maybe we just need them to access the internet because we're there to present, they're there to show us something. Whatever the case may be, we have guest users. We don't want them accessing our production network. So it's restricted access. And yeah, that is to ensure guest users cannot interfere with production systems or data. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 43. In the CIA triad, what does the I represent? And that is integrity. CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, availability. Question 44. What is the role of an access control list in network security? And again, that's used on our routers, our switches, firewalls, routers. There are VACLs on our switches. Distro switch, multi-layer has ACLs. Anyways, that's to filter traffic. So it's going to be to define and enforce rules for filtering traffic based on IP address, ports, or protocols. 2 types of ACL, standard and extended as well. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 45. What is the difference between trusted and untrusted network zones? So trusted zones are typically going to be our intranets, our enterprise, stuff that we set up, something that we control. With the untrusted network, it's going to be everything else. It's typically the internet, external. You put a firewall on a network diagram, you have the untrusted, the trusted zone, external, internal. That's kind of how traditional network perimeter security was always taught and managed. Let's see. Yes, it's going to be D. Trusted zones are internal networks, while untrusted zones include external networks like the internet. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 46. What is the primary function of network access control? So NAC, that is just anything we deploy, protocols like AAA, 802.1x, Radius, port security, that helps us limit who can access our network without some sort of authentication and authorization. So the primary function, to authenticate devices and users before granting network access. That's overall what it's there to do. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 47. Which of the following devices is typically separated onto a guest network to maintain network security? And that's going to be BYOD devices. If you're able to bring your own devices to work on things at work that maybe are just cloud-based access anyways, then maybe they tell you to hook up to the guest network. And then, you got to go on something internal. Well, now use your work computer to access that. Question 48. What does the CIA triad stand for in cybersecurity? Cybersecurity fundamentals here, but it stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 49. Which of the following is a key factor of multi-factor authentication? So that's going to be using 3 major factors. It's going to be something you know, something you have, and something you are. So something you made up, username, password, questions. Something you have, something that you bought was assigned to you. It's a cell phone, a push app notification. It's a YubiKey. It's a token, a CAC, common access card. Then something you are is your biology. It's biometrics. It's scanning a finger, doing a face ID, doing an iris scan. Combining any of those three. So B, it requires multiple forms of verification, such as a password and a fingerprint. Question 50. What is a critical security consideration for implementing network segmentation in a bring your own device BYOD environment? So that's going to make sure that we're segmenting, creating a separate network, typically a VLAN, its own broadcast domain for BYOD devices to limit access to sensitive systems. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes we will just let them on the enterprise network. Just depends. Well, you don't want to do that, but it all depends on your environment. But yeah, so as a baseline, this is what we want to do with BYOD devices coming into our enterprise, coming into our offices. Question 51. Which authentication protocols commonly used to provide centralized authentication, authorization, and accounting for network users, especially in wireless networks? That is going to be Radius. Radius does that. That's what we use a lot in wireless networks. Now, TACX is another AAA protocol, but it's more for command level access, which I like that definition there. When you have Cisco Identity Services Engine and you're implementing TACX, that's typically used when I'm trying to SSH to switches. TACX is involved in that. Now, if I'm just trying to get access to my computer to the Wi-Fi, I'm like pointing up to my access points above me. That's typically WPA2-3 Enterprise that uses Radius. Question 52. Which physical security control is most effective for deterring unauthorized access to a server room? So deterring. So let's see. I mean, probably it's going to be A or B, and I might not like this answer and try to fix it on my end. But biometric locks requiring fingerprint authentication is prevention. That will prevent anyone unauthorized. And unless you're tailgating, but that's a preventative measure. Deterring, when you actually hear the word deterring, it's you can't stop them. It's just something that makes them think twice. So I think it should be B. Let's see what our actual answer is. And I might just on the fly right here, pause the video and change it if we don't like this answer. Yeah, see, you guys are going to see on the fly. I'm going to change this. It should be B because actually I'm just going to change the word. I'm going to put preventing. I'm going to put preventing and then that'll be the right answer. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. You see I changed that? Now it's preventing. All right, we changed it. Sometimes that happens. And now when we end the class, I won't have 100% or in this video. And that's going to make me upset, but that's okay. Prevent, okay? We learned something. That's what we're here for. Question 53. Which network security feature enforces user authentication before a device can access the network? That's going to be 802.1x. 802.1x is going to be that port-based network access that will authenticate you before you actually get access to the network. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 54. What is the primary purpose of PCI DSS compliance? So that's our credit card compliance. So it's going to be C. To ensure the secure handling of credit card information. That's what PCI DSS compliance is. You can see the payment card industry data security standards. Question 55. Why is it important to disable unused ports and services as part of device hardening? That's to reduce our attack surface, to make sure we don't have a port that's open that we don't need that someone could exploit, that an attacker could exploit. So we're going to go with A, to prevent unauthorized access and reduce the attack surface. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 56. Which security feature specifically allows administrators to permit or deny network access based on the unique hardware address? That's MAC filtering, hardware address, burn-in address, all synonyms to describe a MAC address, media access control address. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Question 57. How does an evil twin attack compromise wireless networks? It's a rogue device that mimics a legitimate access point or SSID. So by using a rogue access point with a strong signal to trick users into connecting to it, and that stronger signal, maybe your device will connect to that SSID rather than the weaker signal that may be the legitimate access point. Question 58. Which of the following protocols is typically used to verify identity information stored in a directory, such as a corporate Active Directory for network authentication? That's LDAP. The Lightweight Directory Access Protocol is one of the key protocols used to used in Active Directory. That's LDAP. Question 59. Which of the following best describes a screen subnet, often called a DMZ? That is going to be a different zone to put public-facing things that also can be facing the internal net. So it's going to be a buffer zone between a trusted internal network and an untrusted external network. Pause the video if you'd like to read the explanation. Last question. Here we go. We're not going to get 100%. I'll just redo the whole video. Nah, just kidding. But let's go ahead and dive into this. An attacker positions themselves in a way that allows them to secretly observe an employee typing in their password on a keyboard. What type of attack is this? That is shoulder surfing. Little creepy person looking over my shoulder, looking at me type my password in. That is shoulder surfing, part of the human element of security. And let's go, people. We got 98%. Hey, that's still pretty good. That's passing. That's an A+ right there. So I want to thank everyone for viewing. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends. If you enjoy the content in the channel, leave a comment. Tell me you want this or you want something else. And if you want access to our learning management system, hit the link in the description below where you can get full access to all of our advanced features, get access to our Discord. I'll see you in the next video.